Hi, I'm attorney Gregory Dell, and I'm here today with attorney Stephen Jessup, and we're going to discuss the NFL players' disability policy. And Stephen, as we were recently reviewing again this disability policy that's offered as a benefit for NFL players that have been in the league for years and that are obviously currently in the league, it's probably one of the more complex policies in terms of all of the terms and conditions that are in it. And as we're filming this video here in October of 2020, there was in approximately May of 2020, there were some significant changes that were implemented to this policy, mainly the fact that players were going from the benefit of having something like $22,000 a month as a maximum in the event that they were qualified for disability to what appears to be a maximum of $4,000. So that's really a significant haircut and really minimizes the value of this particular policy, considering the fact that these NFL players make very significant salaries and put themselves at risk throughout their careers, and obviously encounter injuries while playing, and then subsequently later in life, as a result of these injuries, are unable to do any work at all due to their disability. So there's many different aspects of this. We'll just touch on them because the facts and circumstances are different for everybody depending upon years of service that you've been in the league, how many credits you've obtained, the type of injury, whether you were injured while playing or not playing, neurocognitive disorders, a lot of concussion, obviously. It's been all over the place, and CTE and things like that. So, Stephen, when an NFL player contacts you and they're looking to see if they're going to be able to file a claim, what is the first most important thing that you're going to want to know from that player?
Generally speaking, it's always going to kind of be what's going on medically speaking. I think anytime you're looking at a disability claim, regardless if it's through the NFL plan, through Social Security, through any insurance company, is this idea of what the medical problem is and what the strength of that medical information is that's going to support, entitlements under this NFL plan. Under one of the categories that are enumerated in there, is it going to raise to a level of impairment? Plus, there are other side factors that this policy requires in order to be eligible for the benefits. But first and foremost, it's always going to be the medical diagnosis and the strength of the medical records and treatment.
And how thoroughly are those medical records going to be analyzed, and who's going to be looking at the medical records when the claim submitted, whether it's an initial application or it's a claim that's been denied and you're handling an appeal?
It's initially, it's going to be ultimately decided by the NFL. They have a board that kind of reviews everything. Generally speaking, if Social Security disability has approved you, you're going to be approved for, total and permanent disability. However, there are caveats where, 4 members of the board review all the information and they determine that they don't think you're disabled despite having Social Security disability. They can deny you, the total and permanent disability benefits under the NFL plan.
And in terms of once a claim has been denied and you submit an appeal, this board from the NFL, are they going to be required to review all of the additional evidence that's submitted, or do they only need to listen to their own doctors that they hire?
Realistically and ideally, they need to look at everything that's going to be submitted because it may have been in the initial application providing of information, there were items that were missing. So you do have to take a look at perfecting it. Just like most insurance companies, so there is going to be kind of a reliance on their own doctors more so than anything. And there are some changes that are coming to this plan following a recent, collective bargaining agreement that you mentioned earlier. That's going to impact this even worse, where they don't have to, give weight to Social Security, and it's just going to basically be their own internal analysis and review of your medical records.
Right, and that is such a tremendous change in the policy because, while our law firm doesn't handle Social Security disability, but we know the national statistics that already with Social Security disability claims, only 15% of the people who initially apply for these Social Security benefits get approved. So it's already an extremely high threshold to get Social Security disability. So the NFL players policy used to say, if you got approved for Social Security disability, we're going to accept that, and then you're going to get approved for our benefit, which basically put the burden on the government to do the work for them and say whether or not the person was unable to do any occupation. Now they're saying that's not enough. We're going to do it on our own. So obviously, somewhere along the lines, the NFL felt that the government, which is hard to believe for Social Security disability, knowing what we know about how many people get denied, they felt that we're going to do it on our own. Because certainly it wasn't costing them any money to have Social Security review, the file for them. And now they feel that by doing it on their own, obviously it's going to be a method where they're going to deny even more people than were potentially eligible for the policy. So that's a huge concern. The other factor, that we mentioned in this policy is this total and permanent disability threshold they have, which is unique because a lot of the policies that we handle for most employees who work for these other, corporations and get these group employee policies have this elimination period where they say 90 days, if you're 90 or 180 days, you're totally disabled, and then you'll be eligible. But the NFL policy is very unique in the sense that they talk about a permanent disability, and that permanent disability is similar to Social Security. So how is that permanency rated by Social Security versus the NFL? And is that something, Jessup, where if you get approved initially, does that mean they're going to approve you forever, or do you always have to continue to say, I'm no longer, I'm still disabled?
Well, I don't think there's any permanency in how they're going to continue to pay, because we have received calls for, denials following, being on claims. So it's not necessarily that. And there's also, other income components. This NFL plan has 3 different, types of disability claims, if you will. But on this total and permanent disability, they also talk about how you can earn up to $30,000 a year and still get benefits. So there's a weird gray area and ways where they can find, this idea of denying, because it's an idea of permanent, something that's going to reasonably result in the inability to do anything for at least 12 months. So it's really kind of left open as to how they may interpret it. And the fact that, the collective bargaining agreement and the NFL Players Association are kind of revisiting provisions of this policy, it also comes, begs the question, what will also change into the future with it?
So the last issue I want to touch on, which is something we encounter in all of our claims, and especially with the total and permanent disability component of this disability policy, not the line of duty section of this policy, is the fact that many players get out of the league and they do end up doing other jobs, whether they do coaching, whether they retrain, whether they get another career. I mean, there's all kinds of things. Most of these guys are ending sometime in their 20s, if not young 30s, their careers, and they don't end up making these claims until they're in their mid 40s or, years after. And the point is that they've worked for many years. How do you recommend that an NFL player helps to gain the support to be able to say to the NFL, doctor review board, here's why I was able to work for this many years after, and here's why now I can't work at all?
Greg, I think in a lot of ways it's going to be like, any other disability insurance, policy and claim, because it does happen where people will work with injuries for, a period of time. And as you age, obviously a lot of the injuries that you see and it causes a disability for former players are physical. And while you're younger, and obviously if you played in the NFL, your genetic potential is definitely much better than the average person, pain tolerance, all these things. But with age, you will succumb to the body's natural deterioration and the exacerbation of those problems. So it's really documenting that, yes, we've had had these problems for this amount of years, it was able to work, but it's gotten worse. So it really goes back to this idea of working with the doctors, making sure your medical records are documenting the problems that you're having, how they're impacting you in a work setting and also in your activities of daily living. It's building that record because ultimately it's always going to be your medical records that are going to get scrutiny, more so than anything. So if you don't have a strong medical file, it's going to be that much harder to receive benefits. And also, since you did reference how other careers, new careers, and things like that, there is also just as a reminder, especially since you do see a lot of former NFL players get into other industries, insurance, finance, whatever the case may be. A lot of times they may even have group disability providers through insurance policies through those employers. So it may even be you have multiple claims that can be made at any given time. So if you are a former player, just don't think about the policy you're carrying as a former NFL player, but other insurance you may have through your current employer if that is the case.
Right, and it's interesting that you brought that up, because one of the things within the NFL player policy is that now proposed with this new change coming in April of 2021 is that Social Security disability is going to be a deduction from the benefit. So if the benefit does indeed go to $4,000 and then an NFL player qualifies for $2,500, now they're looking at maybe $1,500 from this policy. And they could have worked for another employer who has group coverage like you mentioned, and I believe that that could also be a set-off. So
Correct.
At the end of the day, this entire NFL policy could not even be worth the paper it's printed on, because it's going to get wiped out by other income sources. So it's, I know it's been controversial because the vote was like maybe 1,100 in favor and 900 against of the players that voted. And this was all part of a big package. So I don't know how many players were really focused on the disability, but it's going to be controversial. There's talk about some temporary restraining orders or challenges to the changes of April 2021 that are coming up. I'm not aware of anything that's been filed as of yet, but it's going to be interesting as the years move forward. And there's some people whose benefits may be affected as of possibly 2015 and later who didn't file until after that date. So a lot of technicalities here that we're happy to discuss with you. No matter what stage of your claim you have with the NFL players policy, feel free to call Stephen or myself. We'll be happy to provide you with an initial free consultation. We represent NFL players all over the country, and we always offer initial free consultation. So we look forward to the opportunity to discuss your potential claim with you. Thank you.